Hey everyone, and welcome. Let me ask you something. Have you ever opened up the Bible and just felt a little lost? I mean, it's a huge book, right? It's full of these incredible stories, but sometimes it's really hard to see how they all connect. Well, today, we're going to go on a little journey together to find the thread that ties it all together, to see if there's one central story that makes sense of everything.
Maybe you've felt this way before. You open to a random page, and it seems less like one book and more like a whole library. You've got history, poetry, laws, letters. It can honestly feel like a puzzle with 1,000 scattered pieces, and you're just left wondering, wait, is there even a picture on the box? How does this all fit together?
So let's just start by saying that this feeling is completely normal. For most of us, the Bible doesn't immediately read like some single, flowing epic. It feels a lot more like a collection of different stories, almost like an anthology written over thousands of years. And when we read it that way, what's our first instinct? We start looking for heroes to admire and moral lessons we can apply. We're searching for someone to imitate, for a kind of how-to guide for our own lives.
I mean, just take the story of David and Goliath. It's a classic, right? Our first thought is almost always, okay, I need to be like David. I need to find the courage to face the giants in my own life. Now, that's inspiring, and it's not necessarily wrong, but what if it's not the main point of the story?
See, this way of reading is like a map that we all tend to use. It's a well-worn path that focuses on the moral lessons. It's a really common way to navigate the Bible. But what if this map, as helpful as it seems, isn't actually leading us to the story's true destination?
Theologian Tim Keller frames the central question perfectly. He asks, is the Bible ultimately a story about what we must do, or is it a story about what Christ has already done? And let me tell you, the answer to that question changes absolutely everything.
Just think about it for a second. When the story is about what I must do, the hero of every single passage ends up being, well, me. The focus shifts to my courage, my faith, my effort. All the pressure is right here on my performance. And that approach can become an incredibly heavy weight to carry. If every story is just another command to try harder, it sets us up for one of two things. Either pride, if we think we're succeeding, or complete despair when we inevitably fail. But what if there's a different way to read? A key that makes all those puzzle pieces just snap into place? This is the turning point of our journey, where we discover the story's true center.
So here's the question that changes everything. What if the Bible isn't primarily a collection of heroes for us to imitate, but a single, unified story that's pointing to the one true hero that we all desperately need?
This perspective is often called a Christ-centered interpretation. It suggests that the entire Bible, from Genesis all the way to Revelation, is telling one unified story. And that story is God's plan to rescue the world through Jesus. He isn't just in the New Testament, he is the hidden treasure of the entire book.
Imagine a single red thread of redemption woven through every single page. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's more subtle, but it's always there, connecting Adam, Abraham, Moses, and David, and leading them all to one place, the cross.
So where do we find this thread, especially in the Old Testament? Well, we find it in all these shadows and clues. You can almost call them movie trailers that all point forward to the main event.
Just think about some of these trailers. Right after Adam and Eve sinned, an animal had to die to cover their shame. In Egypt, the blood of a perfect lamb saved God's people from death. For centuries, the entire sacrificial system was this constant reminder that sin requires a substitute. All of these moments created this intense anticipation, a question just hanging in the air. Who is coming to fulfill all this perfectly?
You know, when you see this pattern, you start to wonder, why is the Old Testament so full of unresolved tension? It keeps setting up a problem that it never fully solves. It's like it's building suspense for the one person who can finally step in and fulfill every single promise.
And that brings us to the climax of the entire biblical story. Because in the person of Jesus, every one of those trailers, every promise, and every shadow finds its stunning fulfillment.
Okay, so let's go back to David and Goliath. With this new lens on, what if the story isn't telling us to be David? What if David himself is just a preview, a shadow, pointing to the true champion who would come to fight on our behalf? Look at this parallel. David fought as a substitute for his people. They couldn't win, so he won for them. In the exact same way, Jesus fights as our substitute against the ultimate giants of sin and death. His victory becomes our victory. So the message isn't be David. The message is your champion has come. This reveals this beautiful pattern that you can find in almost any passage. First, you see God's perfect standard.
Then you feel our own inability to meet it. But then you see how Christ fulfilled it perfectly for us, and finally, empowered by His grace, we're free to live a new way, not out of fear, but out of love and gratitude.
You see, this perspective changes everything. It's really about learning to read the entire Bible with new eyes.
So ultimately, it really comes down to this question every single time we open the Bible. Are we reading to find a to-do list, or are we reading to find a Savior?
Because with this view, the Bible just transforms. It stops being a heavy book of rules and becomes the most incredible story of a rescuer. The focus shifts from my performance to His perfection. It stops being about what I must do and becomes entirely about what He has already done.
So the final question is for you. If every single page, from the first garden all the way to the final city, truly points to Jesus, how might that change the way you read it tomorrow? What will you be looking for? Thanks so much for joining this exploration with us.